it's Hayes, and in today's video we're going to be discussing the problem with Zoenette. And before anyone starts typing, oh my god Hayes, I didn't know you were homophobic, let me stop you there. My problem with Zoenette, this relationship, isn't the relationship in itself. While I am an Adrianette stan for life, if Adrian never existed or if he died in a horrific accident, or I suppose it doesn't have to be horrific, but I do like the drama that would bring. Peaceful deaths are for real life, horrific ones are for fiction. Either way, if Adrian wasn't there, either he never existed before or he ceases to exist. Just in my opinion, I obviously will ship different people with whoever in the show, but for me personally, I would like to see Zoenette become a thing. If Adrian wasn't there, Zoe would be like my next top pick with Luca, probably tied with Luca, for a romantic partner for Marinette. I think Zoe and Marinette are super cute together, I love them to bits, so I like the ship. Okay, my problem with Zoenette is not the existence of it. I love it, it's adorable. My problem with Zoenette is how it is written. Now usually in these kinds of videos I go in chronological order, so in this case with Zoe it would be from Soul Crusher because that's her first appearance in the show, but we're actually going to be starting at the end, which is pretty much in Adoration. So Adoration was episode 17 of season 5, and Zoe and Marinette do have some interaction after that. For example, in the episode afterwards, in Emotion, they talk a bit more in Representation, episode 24, but it is largely minimal just to fill things in. It doesn't really advance their relationship anymore. So we're going to be using Adoration as the end, sort of their romantic journey, or romantic journey at the minute, because obviously I don't know what's going to happen next season with them. Now in terms of Adoration, where Zoe and Marinette and their relationship is concerned, not so much the rest of the episode with Sabrina, Lila and Chloe. I'm not going to be talking about that in this video, just the relationship part of the episode. I think that in Adoration was done so well. I thought it was so beautiful. All the subtle signs we were shown about how Zoe feels about Marinette, like the kind of like lopsided smiles, which are very different to the way Zoe usually smiles at other people. Her eyes having like this dreamy like quality, they didn't open all the way when she looked at Marinette. Like the whole way she looks at Marinette in this episode is just really soft. It's really clear how Zoe feels about Marinette, pretty much from one of the first scenes of the episode, and then obviously towards the end of the episode Zoe does confess how she feels to Marinette, which is then followed up by Marinette finally telling Adrian she loves him. But in my opinion the Zoe confession was just so much more beautiful that it completely overshadowed the Adrian one, since it was nowhere near as good. Like, as I said at the start of the video, Adrianette stan for life, I love them to bits, but like the Zoe confession was far better than Marinette, sorry. It was so much better. It was so rubbish in comparison to Zoe's. Like, they shouldn't have put them one after the other like that, because Zoe's was just, it wasn't even just a little bit better, it was, oh my, everything. It was everything in the confession, and Marinette's was a bit rubbish to be honest. Like, whoever wrote those like ending scenes of Adoration, they clearly put all the effort into the Zoenette one, and then they just couldn't be bothered for the Adrianette one. It was pretty obvious. They shouldn't have put them together. So Adoration, in terms of Zoe and Marinette and their relationship and how we're shown how Zoe feels, and then the confession at the end, was in my opinion pretty perfect. I thought it was executed perfectly in Adoration.
However,
there is only one more episode where we see how Zoe feels about Marinette, which is season 5 episode 10 Transmission, which is where Tiki and Plague fire Adrian and Marinette.
You're fired.
Which isn't something I realised they could do. However, Marinette is pretty upset in Transmission about Adrian or Catnamore, or maybe the economy as well. And apart from Adrian, Zoe is really the only other person out of their big friend group who seems to realise there's actually something a bit more going on with Marinette. And she just tries to call Marinette. Marinette doesn't pick up because she's crying, not because she's ignoring Zoe or anything like that. But it's clear in Transmission that Zoe cares for Marinette in a way that is perhaps different to the way Alia cares for her, or Nino, or Julika, or any of the other people. And that's really it. Those are really all the signs we get in the show about how Zoe feels for Marinette. Between Soul Crusher, Zoe's debut, and Adoration, the end, where Zoe confesses her feelings, apart from Transmission, there really isn't anything, in my opinion, to show us how Zoe feels about Marinette. And just in general, Marinette and Zoe don't interact a whole great deal. Zoe is largely in a lot of the episodes to just be a part of the friend group. Like, she's just kind of there. She doesn't often interact a lot with Marinette, she just kind of has lines to add to the group. And her and Marinette don't have a lot of meaningful conversations and interaction apart from in Queen Banana, but their conversations in that episode are all about really Chloe and the film, not so much about them as friends or as something more. And Zoe certainly doesn't act towards Marinette the way she does in Adoration. In Queen Banana or any other episode apart from Transmission and Adoration, Zoe doesn't act differently towards Marinette in any other way. She interacts with her quite normally, the same way everyone else would act towards Marinette. And this is where my problem is. Other than Adoration, which is the episode where Zoe confirms how she feels, and Transmission, we have zero idea how Zoe feels about Marinette. And in Adoration, Zoe actually says,
Marinette, I've been wanting to tell you how I feel since the day I met you.
So the first day Marinette and Zoe met was in Soul Crusher. So if you don't remember, Zoe arrives in Paris. Before she goes to the hotel, the taxi driver recommends Marinette's bakery. Zoe goes in, she meets Sabine, and then Marinette when she walks in. And this apparently is the moment where Zoe falls for Marinette. Which, in theory, I'm fine with that happening. A lot of people fall in love with other people when they just see them for the first time. I don't mind that. However, where were the signs of that? When did it happen? How did it happen? Why did it happen? There is nothing about Zoe's interaction with Marinette in this scene in Soul Crusher that is different with almost how everyone else in the show interacts with each other, with the exceptions being how Cat Noir acts with Ladybug, or Marinette with Adrien, or Adrien in season 5 after multiplication when he realises how he feels about Marinette. I'm sure you can think of other examples, but for the most part, how Zoe interacts with Marinette in Soul Crusher or just throughout the show until Transmission and then Adoration, all those interactions with Marinette are no different to how Zoe interacts with everyone else, really. And then we finally see how she feels, even though she acts like Marinette's just a friend. So if Soul Crusher really is the moment that Zoe falls for her, which I think is plausible that it could have happened then, where was the indication of that? You know, it didn't have to be something big, and even if it was, Marinette wouldn't notice anyway, since she's a walking disaster. But there is no indication of that. And I know a lot of people defend it and say, well, Zoe smiled at Marinette. Can smiling be a sign you have a crush on someone? Yeah, it can be, but in conjunction with other things. Smiling alone won't do it. Zoe also smiled at Sabine. As far as I'm aware, she's also not in love with Marinette's mum. Or maybe she is, I don't know. I hope she's not, but you know what I mean? I smile at people all the time. Doesn't mean I'm in love with them. There has to be other signs. And there was no indication of that in the opening scene of Soul Crusher or in the rest of Soul Crusher, for example at the end where Zoe goes to meet Marinette and everyone else on the boat. There was no indication of it. The point I'm trying to make, as beautiful as I think Zoe's confession to Marinette in Adoration was, as well done as I think it was, because I do think, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the rest of the episode, I do think that moment was perfect. And as wonderful as the rest of the episode showed us how Zoe felt, it had almost zero build-up, with really only one scene in Transmission to help the build-up of it. That was really it. We got one whole episode of Adoration, one scene in Transmission, and that was it. To me, there was no true moment where Zoe fell for Marinette, because to me, no matter what Zoe says, their meeting in Soul Crusher was almost exactly the same as how Marinette meets other new people in the show. The interaction was largely the same as her interaction with Alia. She was new at the school in Origins, and their meeting feels exactly the same as Marinette's and Zoe's. So my problem isn't with the ship itself. I think Zoe and Marinette together is absolutely adorable, and the confession was beautiful in Adoration. My problem is that it didn't get the moment it really deserved when Zoe arrived and apparently fell in love with Marinette right away. Like, to me, it just didn't happen. It does very much seem it was something decided after season 4, which I do find a bit odd, since I'm pretty sure, not 100% certain, but pretty sure 4 and 5 were written together. That's why we got season 5 so quickly after season 4. So they already knew when Zoe walked in Soul Crusher how she was going to feel, yet they just chose not to show how she felt for reasons I do not understand. So that's my problem with Zoenette. Whilst it had an amazing conclusion to it, because I'm assuming it's not going to go any further, because Marinette, as much as she does like Zoe, she's not in love with her, she's in love with Adrien, as we all know. So it had a lovely conclusion. I thought it was beautiful, the confession. As much as I loved that, it didn't get really any build-up. Like I said, it seems like they knew when they were writing season 4 what was going to happen in season 5. It already would have been planned. They would know what Zoe was, how Zoe felt, what she was going to do ultimately in Adoration, but it was like it was almost forgotten about and added in as an afterthought, like, oh wait, we haven't built this up at all in season 4 and we forgot to in season 5, so we'll just shove it in transmission because why not? And I really think it's sad and such a massive shame, considering it's like the first, arguably the first confirmed LGBTQ plus ship in the show. Like, I know we all know that Rose and Julika are dating and so are Mark and Nathaniel, but it's never been properly confirmed because of like the censorship restriction issues around the show, you know, because of all the different countries it get shown in. But you know, Zoe confessing it confirms how she feels, and I just find it sad that a ship that to me is quite important for representation didn't get the build-up it deserved. And while the confession in Adoration was beautiful, I loved it, I cannot fault that singular moment, it could have been so much better if it had a better build-up starting from Soul Crusher. And when I say build-up, it doesn't need to be in every single episode, just sprinkle it in occasionally. But like, the only other hint we got was in one episode? Doesn't quite make sense. But anyway, besties, that's what I think about Zoenette. Like I said, I love the ship. My problem isn't with the ship. My problem is with the writing around it, and I think it's such a shame since it's quite an important ship. So anyway, besties, I would love to know what you think of this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!